The galaxy had classified humans as unpredictable, fragile, and easily controlled. That single mistake would soon cost entire civilizations their pride, their power, and their future. No one felt the weight of that coming storm more than Saren Val, a full-grown Dravari officer with crimson scales and eyes like molten gold. She stood in the upper gallery of the Heliox Galactic Academy, watching history unfold below her. For the first time in 10,000 cycles, humans were being welcomed into an institution reserved for the galaxy's most advanced species. Not as guests, not as observers, but as equals. Whispers slithered through the vast hall. Fear, disgust, curiosity, contempt. Humans came from Terra, a so-called death world. A planet of unstable climates, violent ecosystems, and endless internal wars. By all galactic logic, humans should not have survived long enough to invent starflight. Yet here they were. Saren folded her wings tightly against her back. She told herself she was here out of duty. As the daughter of a high council strategist, her presence was expected. But deep inside, something far more dangerous stirred. Curiosity. The massive doors parted with a deep metallic echo. 4 humans entered. They were smaller than most species present. No natural armor. No claws. No fangs. And yet, the room shifted the moment they stepped forward. Not because of fear. Because of confidence. Saren's gaze locked onto one of them without her permission. He walked with calm control, dark hair neatly trimmed, eyes scanning the chamber like a battlefield rather than a classroom. His posture was relaxed, but his awareness was sharp. This was not a boy. This was a man shaped by pressure, survival, and loss. His name appeared on the hovering display above him. Ethan Cole. Terran Defense Corps. Tactical Division. Saren felt her pulse quicken, an unfamiliar warmth spreading beneath her scales. Dravari did not react this way. Desire was regulated. Emotional bonds were discouraged. Weakness was dangerous. And yet, something about the human's presence felt grounding. The headmaster's voice boomed across the hall, welcoming the humans and reminding everyone that cooperation was now mandatory. That humanity's admission was a calculated decision by the council. Saren knew the truth. It was fear. Humans had won 3 border conflicts despite inferior technology. They adapted faster than simulation models could predict. They learned from failure instead of collapsing under it. Where other species relied on rigid doctrine, humans improvised. The Academy dismissed them as students. The Council studied them as potential threats. Classes began that same cycle. Saren found herself seated beside Ethan in advanced xenostrategy, a coincidence she did not believe in. Their first exchange was brief, polite, professional. But when their eyes met, something electric passed between them. Not attraction alone. Recognition. During a live tactical simulation, alien cadets relied on established formations, perfect geometry, and overwhelming force. Ethan did none of that. When his team was surrounded, he broke formation entirely. Sacrificed ground. Drew the enemy inward. Then collapsed their advantage from within using misdirection and timing no algorithm had predicted. The simulation ended in silence. Saren stared at the tactical display, stunned. That maneuver violated every rule she had been taught. And yet, it worked. Later, in the corridor, she stopped him without thinking. "You should have failed," she said bluntly. Ethan smiled slightly. "So should humanity. Guess we're bad at following expectations." That answer unsettled her more than the victory. Over the following cycles, she observed him closely. Humans questioned instructors, challenged assumptions, tested limits. They trained harder after losing and laughed while bleeding. Where alien cadets feared mistakes, humans treated them as tools. Saren began staying late in the archives, reviewing human history. Their wars were brutal. Their losses staggering. Entire cities erased. Yet they rebuilt. Again. And again. And again. What terrified her was not their violence. It was their refusal to give up. One night, long after curfew, a station-wide alert shattered the Academy's calm. A deep space anomaly had destabilized the orbital grid. Training drones malfunctioned. Defense systems misfired. Panic spread. Alien cadets froze, awaiting orders. Humans moved. Ethan didn't wait for permission. He rerouted power manually, coordinated mixed-species teams, and improvised solutions with limited tools. Saren found herself following him without hesitation, her instincts aligning with his commands. At one point, a blast door malfunctioned, trapping them together in a narrow service corridor as gravity flickered. For a moment, there was only darkness, emergency lights, and shared breathing. "You okay?" Ethan asked quietly. Saren nodded, then realized he couldn't see. "Yes." Their hands brushed as the station lurched. Her scales warmed where his skin touched. Not unpleasant. Not frightening. Just real. When the crisis ended, the Academy credited the response to joint cooperation. Privately, instructors whispered. The humans had taken control. That night, Saren stood alone in her quarters, staring at her reflection. Dravari law forbade emotional attachment to non-Dravari. Especially humans. Especially now. Yet she could not silence the truth. Ethan Cole made her question everything she had been taught about strength, connection, and destiny. And somewhere deep in the void, forces far older and crueler than the Academy were already watching humanity's rise. The galaxy had invited humans in. It would soon regret underestimating what followed. The first official report labeled the incident as a systems failure. The unofficial truth spread through the Academy like a silent shockwave. Humans had taken control when everyone else froze. Saren Val felt the consequences immediately. Instructors began watching her more closely. Her father's messages became colder, more careful. The High Council did not like variables, and humans were the largest variable they had ever allowed inside their walls. Ethan Cole, however, seemed unaffected. If anything, the attention only sharpened him. During combat theory, he challenged simulations by deliberately breaking them. When instructors questioned his methods, he asked a simple question in return. "Does the enemy know your rules?" No one answered. Saren found herself assigned to Ethan's team during a classified joint exercise. The mission parameters were clear: escort a data core through hostile territory while facing an unknown opponent. The Academy expected failure. The Dravari doctrine demanded caution and layered defense. Ethan did something else. He studied the terrain for a long time, then quietly said, "They're watching the core. So we stop pretending it matters." Saren tilted her head. "The objective is to make them think we care about the wrong thing," he replied. When the exercise began, Ethan sent half the team forward with the data core, loudly and visibly. Saren remained with him and two others, moving through narrow service routes no alien doctrine considered tactically relevant. The ambush came exactly where Ethan predicted. While enemy units closed in on the decoy team, Ethan rerouted the real data through an unsecured maintenance uplink. The objective was completed before the enemy realized they had been outplayed. The instructors ended the simulation early. This time, the silence was heavier. Afterward, Saren confronted him in the observation deck. "You gamble with lives," she said. Ethan leaned against the railing, looking out at the stars. "We gamble so fewer lives are lost later." That answer followed her for days. The more she watched humans, the more she noticed the differences others ignored. Humans formed bonds quickly. They argued, laughed, and trusted each other with reckless speed. But when pressure came, they closed ranks like nothing could break them. Dravari strength was discipline. Human strength was unity born from choice. The Academy soon announced a full-scale war scenario. A simulated invasion. Mixed species command teams. The winner would set future doctrine standards. Failure would mean one thing: humans would be labeled a mistake. Saren was assigned as Ethan's second-in-command. The moment the briefing ended, political pressure crashed down on her. A direct message from her father appeared on her console. "Distance yourself. The Council is watching. If the humans fail, they will look for someone to blame." Saren stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. When the simulation began, chaos followed instantly. Enemy fleets overwhelmed standard defense patterns. Alien commanders hesitated, waiting for approval chains that no longer existed. Ethan did not wait. He decentralized command, pushing authority downward. Small teams. Fast decisions. Constant adaptation. Trust your instincts, he told Saren during a brief lull. You know more than you think. That terrified her more than the enemy. When their command ship took critical damage, the Dravari doctrine demanded retreat. Ethan ordered a controlled collapse instead. They let sections fall. Drew enemy units deeper. Cut power deliberately. Then rerouted everything through systems the enemy didn't even recognize as weapons. The final strike came from a converted navigation array. The simulation ended with the enemy fleet in disarray and the human-led force standing. The academy erupted. Some instructors applauded. Others looked disturbed. The council representatives did not clap at all. Later that cycle, Saren and Ethan found themselves alone in the botanical chamber, surrounded by glowing alien flora. You defied direct doctrine, Saren said quietly. Ethan nodded. Doctrine doesn't save people. People save people. She studied his face, searching for deception. There was none. Only exhaustion. Resolve. And something softer beneath it. You risked everything, she said. So did you, he replied. The air between them felt heavy. Not forbidden. Not dangerous. Honest. Before either could speak again, alarms sounded. Real alarms. Not simulated. A hostile fleet had entered Academy space. This time, it wasn't training. And the galaxy would soon learn the difference between studying humanity and facing it. The alarms did not stop. They grew louder, deeper, layered with urgency codes Saren had only seen during historical disasters. Red light flooded the Academy corridors as gravity stabilized into combat mode. This was no longer a drill. No instructor stepped forward to take control. No doctrine activated. The hostile fleet was real. Long-range sensors identified them as Krell Dominion raiders, an ancient power that believed fear was the most efficient form of control. They had tested dozens of civilizations. Most had fallen within days. The Academy was not a military fortress. It was a symbol. And symbols made tempting targets. Saren felt her chest tighten as emergency projections lit the central command chamber. Enemy ships outnumbered local defenses 3-1. Automated systems requested authorization from the High Council. Authorization that would arrive too late. Ethan was already moving. Seal secondary corridors. Redirect civilian traffic to lower decks. Kill the broadcast beacons, he said calmly, fingers flying across the console. An instructor hesitated. You do not have command authority. Ethan looked up. His voice never rose. Then relieve me. Or help me. But don't stand there while people die. Silence followed. No one relieved him. Saren stepped beside him, her wings flaring slightly as she accessed Dravari command channels. I can reroute internal shields, but it will expose the eastern wing. That's fine, Ethan replied instantly. They'll go for the obvious opening. You are predicting their psychology, she said. I'm counting on it. The first impact rocked the station. Students screamed. Lights flickered. Somewhere, hull plating buckled. The Krell broadcast cut through all frequencies, a low, mocking growl translated into dozens of languages. Submit. Or be made an example. Fear spread fast. Humans moved faster. Ethan divided mixed teams in seconds. Not by species. By capability. Engineers with tacticians. Medics with fighters. Those who could think under pressure were given responsibility immediately. No permission. No ceremony. Saren watched alien cadets hesitate, then follow. Because the human commands worked. Enemy boarding pods breached the outer ring. Krell warriors poured in, armored and massive, their weapons designed to terrify. They expected panic. They met resistance. Improvised barricades. Power fluctuations timed to overload enemy sensors. Hallways turned into traps using environmental controls no one had ever thought to weaponize. Saren fought alongside Ethan in the western wing. Her claws struck with practiced precision. His movements were raw, efficient, fueled by instinct and training. They did not need to speak. They anticipated each other naturally. At one point, a Krell brute cornered them, its weapon charging. Ethan shoved Saren aside, taking the blast across his shoulder. He hit the wall hard, breath knocked from his lungs. Something inside Saren snapped. She launched herself forward with a ferocity that surprised even her, driving her talons through the Krell's armor seams. The creature collapsed. For a moment, she knelt beside Ethan, fear gripping her tighter than any enemy. "I'm fine," he said through clenched teeth. "Just, not my best day." Relief hit her like a wave. She realized then how deeply he mattered to her. Not as an idea. Not as a curiosity. As a person. The Krell assault stalled. Not because they lacked strength. Because they could not predict humans. Their models failed. Their fear tactics backfired. Every loss made the defenders more adaptive. But the enemy fleet still loomed. In the command chamber, a council representative finally appeared on the holo-channel. "Evacuate. Abandon the academy." Ethan shook his head. "If we run, they'll follow. If we fall back, they learn. This place becomes proof that fear works." "That is not your decision," the counselor snapped. Ethan met the projection's gaze. "Then make one. Because right now, we're the only reason this station is still standing." The line cut. Saren stared at the empty holo display. "They're leaving us." Ethan exhaled slowly. "No. They're letting us prove something." A human engineer rushed in with a wild idea. Reroute the Academy's experimental gravity array. Use it not as a weapon, but as a distortion field. It was insane. Untested. Dangerous. Ethan smiled faintly. "Do it." The array activated. Space itself twisted. Krell ships lost formation, colliding, drifting, panicking as their own mass worked against them. Human teams exploited the opening, striking surgically, disabling engines instead of destroying ships. The message was clear. "We don't need to annihilate you to defeat you." The Krell fleet withdrew. Not in victory. In confusion. As silence returned, Saren felt the weight of everything crash down at once. Lives saved. Lines crossed. Futures altered. The Academy still stood. Because humans refused to retreat. Later, in the aftermath, Saren and Ethan stood alone near a viewport, stars stretching endlessly beyond. "You defied the Council," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "They'll be angry. They may punish you." "Probably." She turned to face him fully. "I would choose it again." Their eyes met. In that moment, Saren understood what the galaxy truly feared. Not human strength. Human choice. And she had already made hers. Victory did not bring celebration. It brought scrutiny. Within hours of the Krell retreat, High Council vessels arrived, their sleek hulls casting long shadows over the battered academy. Emergency crews worked through the wreckage, tending to the injured and sealing fractured decks. Official statements praised collective resilience, but everyone knew the truth. Humans had led. Humans had decided. Humans had won. And that terrified the galaxy. Saren Val felt it in every glance sent her way. Admirers. Critics. Observers calculating political consequences. Her father's message came shortly after the council ships docked. "You have crossed a line," he said through a secure channel. His voice was controlled, but she knew him well enough to hear the anger beneath it. "Aligning yourself with humans during an unsanctioned defense will have consequences." Saren held her head high. "If we had waited, the Academy would be gone." "That is not the question," he replied. "The question is who now controls the narrative." She understood then. This was never about safety. It was about authority. Ethan was summoned first. 2 council guards escorted him to the central chamber, not as a prisoner, but not as an equal either. Saren watched from the gallery as holographic councillors surrounded him, their forms towering and cold. "You acted without authorization," one councillor stated. "You disobeyed established doctrine," said another. "You placed alien lives in the hands of a human," a third added pointedly. Ethan listened without interruption. When they finished, he spoke calmly. "You invited us here to learn, to integrate, to cooperate. When the test came, we did exactly that. If that threatens you, then the problem isn't us." The chamber went silent. That silence turned dangerous. The council announced its decision quickly. Human authority within the academy would be suspended. All humans would be reassigned to non-command roles pending further review. Ethan would be removed from the academy and returned to Terran space. Exile disguised as diplomacy. Saren's chest tightened. She was given her own ultimatum moments later: publicly distance herself from human influence, or lose her position and her family's standing. That night, the academy felt colder than ever. Saren found Ethan in the observation hangar, staring at the stars through a fractured viewport. His shoulder was still bandaged. He didn't turn when she approached. "So," he said quietly, "looks like I won the battle and lost the war." She stepped beside him. "They fear what you represent." "Good," he replied. "Means we mattered." Silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them had planned to feel. "They want me to denounce you," Saren said. Ethan finally looked at her. There was no accusation in his eyes. Only understanding. "Then you should." Her wings twitched. "I won't." That answer cost her everything. The next cycle, Saren Val was stripped of her provisional command authority. Her family name was quietly removed from several council rosters. She was reassigned to logistics, a role designed to make her invisible. She accepted it without protest. Because something far larger was happening beyond the academy walls. Reports arrived from border systems. The Krell Dominion had withdrawn, but not retreated. They were spreading a new warning across the outer systems. Humans are unpredictable. Do not provoke them. That warning spread faster than fear ever had. Human fleets mobilized not in aggression, but in preparation. Defensive alliances formed. Smaller species reached out to Terra directly, bypassing the Council entirely. For the first time in galactic history, power was shifting without permission. The Council noticed. So did their enemies. 1 week before Ethan's scheduled departure, the Academy suffered a second crisis. Not an invasion. A sabotage. Power cores destabilized simultaneously across 3 decks. A coordinated attempt to cripple the station from within. Evidence pointed toward Council-affiliated security forces attempting to manufacture a human-caused disaster. They underestimated 2 things: Saren's access and human pattern recognition. She found Ethan in minutes. "They're trying to make you the excuse," she said. "If the Academy falls now, they blame humanity." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Then we stop it." Without command authority. Without permission. Without support. Human engineers and alien allies moved quietly through maintenance shafts and sealed corridors. Saren rerouted internal sensors, masking their movements. Ethan mapped the sabotage pattern, predicting the final trigger point before it activated. They reached the core chamber with seconds to spare. A council operative stood frozen when they entered, weapon half raised. "This isn't your decision," the operative said. Ethan shook his head. "That's where you're wrong." Saren deactivated the core stabilizer override, locking the system manually. The sabotage failed. The evidence was undeniable. The Council's plan collapsed in on itself. This time, there was no silence. The Academy demanded answers. Smaller species demanded accountability. Terran diplomats demanded transparency. The Council was forced to retreat. Not in defeat. In shame. On the day Ethan was meant to leave, the orders were rescinded. Human command authority was not only restored, It was expanded. Sarin stood beside him as the announcement echoed through the academy halls. Their hands brushed, neither pulling away. "You could still walk away," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "Not when there's work left to do." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and understood what her people had never seen. Humans didn't seek control. They accepted responsibility. And the galaxy would never be the same because of it. The galaxy did not change in a single moment. It changed in thousands of small decisions, quiet shifts in loyalty, and the slow realization that the old rules no longer worked. The Heliox Galactic Academy reopened fully within weeks. Repairs were completed. Systems upgraded. But something deeper had been altered. The corridors felt different. Less rigid. Less afraid. Humans were no longer watched as experiments. They were watched as examples. Ethan Cole stood in the central command chamber, not as a cadet, but as a liaison between species. The title meant little to him. Responsibility meant everything. Human doctrine had already begun spreading through academy curricula. Adaptive command, decentralized decision-making, failure analysis instead of punishment. Some instructors resisted. Most adapted. Because the results spoke louder than tradition. Sarin Val worked beside Ethan openly now. No longer hidden. No longer restrained by political expectation. Her people whispered her name with mixed tones, disapproval from the old, admiration from the young. She accepted both. Her father requested a private meeting days later. His image appeared older than she remembered, his posture less certain. "You chose a difficult path," he said. "I chose a necessary one," Sarin replied. He studied her carefully. "The council is weakening. Human influence accelerates that." Sarin met his gaze without fear. Then perhaps it was already weak. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he nodded once. Not approval. Acceptance. Beyond the academy, change moved faster. The Krell Dominion withdrew from contested space entirely. Not because they had been defeated militarily, but because unpredictability frightened them more than firepower. Other aggressive powers followed suit, recalculating risk models that no longer worked against human logic. Smaller civilizations reached out to Terra directly. Not for protection. For partnership. Humans shared technology freely. But more importantly, they shared mindset. Training programs. Joint commands. The idea that authority was earned through action, not granted by lineage. It spread like a quiet revolution. The High Council attempted one final measure. A binding resolution to limit human expansion and influence. The vote failed. Too many species abstained. Too many remembered who had stood when fear demanded silence. On the night the resolution collapsed, Sarin and Ethan stood once more in the observation chamber where everything had begun. Stars stretched endlessly before them, ancient and uncaring. "The galaxy is afraid," Sarin said softly. Ethan nodded. "It should be. Change always scares people." "You don't regret it?" she asked. "Defying them. Staying." He considered the question carefully. "Humans don't regret choices. We live with them." She turned toward him fully then. Her wings shifted, relaxed. "Open. My people believe bonds weaken judgment," she said. "And humans believe they strengthen it," Ethan replied. They stood close now. Not rushed. Not reckless. Just present. "I risked everything," Sarin said. "So did I," Ethan answered. No dramatic gesture followed. No grand declaration. Just the quiet certainty that some alliances were worth the cost. In the cycles that followed, the Heliox Academy became something new. Not a monument to hierarchy, but a forge. Humans and aliens trained together, argued together, failed together, and rose stronger each time. History would not remember every name, but it would remember the moment the galaxy stopped underestimating humanity. Not because humans were the strongest. Not because they were the most advanced. But because when faced with impossible odds, humans chose action over fear, responsibility over comfort, and unity over control. And because one reptilian woman chose to believe that strength was not defined by species, but by courage. The galaxy had invited humanity in. Humanity answered. And from that moment on, the stars were no longer ruled by fear. They were shared. The end.